Let's do this. How do they start it? How do they keep it going? And how do you lead and grow the team? I'm organizational psychologist Eve Duke, and I'm pulling back the curtain behind some of the coolest businesses out there. For founders, entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, and anyone curious about how business is done, this is The Business Of.
Let's go!
Hey guys, okay, we are here with Greg Rose. So welcome back to The Business Of. Greg Rose from the Roxy Theatre, a historical landmark here in Revelstoke, BC. Greg, why don't you kick us off telling us a little bit about your journey coming to have this movie theater in your life?
Well, it is a bit of a strange one. It all kind of came down in COVID. I've been involved. I had my own company in oil and gas years ago back in Edmonton, and moved out here to be a bit of a ski bum for a bit, and did some odds and sods jobs and bartended, and was just being a wonderful ski bum, and it was great. And then I was kind of contemplating heading home, and then met my now wife, and we're here. And during COVID, a friend of mine had reached out. He was interested in getting involved in some real estate in Revelstoke, and this theater kind of came up, and he reached out to me, and we decided to head on down this road. And so I don't own the building, but I own the business. And so, yeah, we took it over in November of 2020, and things were pretty grim and dire then. And well, it got worse right away. we were operating for 5 days, and then we got closed down for a year. So all the excitement that comes with taking on a new venture, and I had a bit of a walkthrough with the old owners when it all went down. But it's funny, I barely even think about that now because it so abruptly ended that we just had to totally change gears. And so forgive me if I'm jumping around a bit here, but so we kind of moved to repair and maintenance, and operating a few concession nights a week just out the front, our front service window outside, selling popcorn to anybody who wanted to come down and get a bag while we were closed. And so we just kind of stumbled through it then. And this is a 100-and-some-year-old building. The Roxy Theatre is located, downtown in kind of one of the older parts of town. And so it had been, loved and cared for over the years, but, things just build up, and it needed lots of it. And well, what better time than when you're shut down to get right after it? So it's funny. I feel like I've only been running the theater for a little while, but it's been longer because that first year was just electrical fixes and plumbing fixes and fixing the seats and upgrading some of the equipment in the projection room and converting us to a 7.1 surround sound from 5.1. And so all just these little changes to hopefully improve the experience for our viewers. And so here we are, 3 years later? Yeah, coming up on 3. And we've been kind of open for a year and a half. I should have pulled up these dates and been better with that. But yeah, that's where we're at. And things more or less feel like they've returned to normal. We had Super Mario playing here, which is the busiest movie that this theater, I get my booking agent out of Toronto. He pulled up some of the numbers, and with, inflation adjusted and everything, we've had some of the busier films in this last year. So I'd like to think that movies are back and the viewership is back. The content is still catching up as we come out of COVID. That movies take about 2 years to come to life, 2 to 3. And so we're still seeing a bit of that lag of that shutdown kind of coming these years later. But in general, this summer looks about as good as it gets. We've got Indiana Jones opens today for 2 weeks, and then we're going to have Transformers, which is a bit of an older one. And then we're going to have Mission Impossible for a week, Barbie for a week, Oppenheimer for a week, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, blah, blah, blah. It goes on. And so there's kind of something for everyone. So it's wonderful. We're back, and that's kind of the journey. I don't know. I'm sure I've missed something, but that's a pretty good Coles Notes of what's going on.
Yeah. Okay. So a couple things I wanted to touch on. Let's go back to getting the theater, purchasing the business. during COVID. So no, you're November 2020, you purchase a movie theater. Do you think that having the mandatory shutdown, do you think that was actually a little bit better for the business coming into it? Or do you think it was like, kind of, if you were to do it over, do you think there was a little bit of a blessing in disguise that it's like, okay, well, there's nothing else left that I can do here except for start to upgrade the building, upgrade the equipment, and then kind of prepare the business to run it, hopefully eventually one day.
I mean, it's a once in a generation sort of event, and but certainly it was financially devastating. We weren't even scratching at profit for that year, and it was really, it just shifted to, okay, let's invest in, like you said, getting things up to a level. And not that the old owners hadn't done things, but just a lot of the equipment was dated, and all these, the thing about theaters is they're open 7 days a week. It's really hard to get anything done. You're not closed for weekends or like many other traditional businesses. So it was a great thing to get that. And, I'm the type of guy, I like to know the car is running well, that it's had its maintenance and this theater just needed, me to go through everything to get familiar with it, because I had no experience in this business. I'd never sold a movie ticket. I'd never scooped a bag of popcorn, nothing. But I've been involved in businesses. And so every business just has its challenges. You learn it and you run with it. And so it was a good thing to have that time to, go through everything and get familiar with it. Although when we actually opened up again, I hadn't actually done any of that sort of work at all in that period. So it felt like another genesis. You're like, okay, I know this place like the back of my hand, but I didn't know how to, order the movies and build them and test them and all of that, those sort of little intricacies, which after a year or so, I'm a bit more comfortable with that now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk about that now that we're on it. Let's talk about that. So how do you run a movie theater? I guess. And the interesting thing I like about the Roxy Theatre and why I wanted to also do this podcast is there's a Roxy Theatre in every small town. And
we're not the only one.
Well, I mean, it's like, in some capacity, like where I grew up in Muskoka, it was the Norwood Cinema. It's like the same. It's the same thing. It's the same popcorn. It's like, I think it's the same model. So tell us about that. Tell us about the model. How do you run a theater?
So, forgive me, I'll have to, if I miss something or you have questions, just interrupt. But in general, how it works is, movies start on Friday. Let's start there.
Okay.
So the movies open Friday and they run for a week. And so it goes Friday to Thursday. So Thursday would be the last night of the show, unless you have it for 2 weeks. Then it'd be the following Thursday. So that's something that maybe we've all kind of are aware that usually it opens, but I don't know if most of us would think about that. I certainly didn't think about that.
And that's a requirement. Like, that's not you.
It's all like from the studios. So, first of all, to show movies, you have to be a licensed theater. So I have a license from Consumer Protection, and you have to fill out all these contracts with each individual studio. I forget about that because that all happened in the beginning, and starting up was a mountain of paperwork. Certainly when you're not familiar with any of it, it's all, and these contracts some of them are 30 pages thick, and that's just to carry Paramount's movie.
Yeah.
And then the simplest one was the Disney contract. It was 1 page, but they've been the most complicated to deal with. They're the strictest of the bunch and assert their will on us lowly theaters, and but they also have usually the best content. So it's that kind of trade-off. But so, we went through the process, or I went through the process of getting all of the contracts filled out for each studio. So Sony and Warner Brothers and Paramount, Disney, some of the smaller ones, E1, Cineplex, there's a bunch. I'm probably missing a few in there, but all of these distributors, you have to have permission, and they have to know who you are, what your theater number is, what equipment you have, because the movies get sent digitally now. They used to get sent just kind of in the mail digitally, but I've upgraded all that, so it all just happens like over the internet.
Mailed digitally, or would they be like on a drive?
Big
or
brick.
Like a reel?
Like, no. Well, that was before my time.
This is how little I know.
Used to be those, movie reels that we're, kind of familiar with the, stuff that you can peek through. That equipment, to the best of my knowledge, was pulled out of here in like the 2000s, and they went.
So not even that long ago, not like 1960.
No. And so the system we run on now they're called DCP. I think it's like Dolby Cinema Project or something. Anyway, DCP is the format that all the movies come in. And some of the things that I found interesting about it is whenever, if you're watching a movie at home on your computer, or if you're watching clips on your phone or something, well, the version that we play in the theater is the full version. It's the full massive, the Batman. I have it stuck in my head that the drive for the Batman was something like 650 gigabytes. And that'll be a number of different versions of the film and that, but these are huge files, and they need to be huge because when you're projecting onto a screen of that size, you can't be dealing with a small file. So I feel like I've lost my track of my story
they require you. So just a little bit of a sidebar question here. So they send you the film.
Yep.
Send it to you in a drive. Do they require you then to send it back afterwards?
So that's how it used to work. So I should have grabbed,
or like self-destruct after a week.
Well, the self-destruct part of it, that's a very interesting comment, and they're very these things you have a digital key for. So on one hand, you get the file sent to you, and then these files are only sent in like a certain format, and I have a very specific computer that can read that. But in addition to that, a digital key gets emailed to me, and that has to get ingested into the equipment, and it's a closed system, and then that will make the file work for a certain period of time. So, people are always asking like, oh, well, we just want to watch The Little Mermaid, but it finished a week ago. But like, I've got the file upstairs, but the actual key for the file would have expired last night at midnight. So as much as I've got the movie upstairs, it's unplayable. So that's how it works, is just this key system, and that's what keeps I guess keeps us honest as theaters, and protects the studio's assets, so that we're doing that. And the next question most people are asked is, how does the payment work with that? Well, I have to report every night. I send a report every night for how many people came to the show. So that is the tracking of it. So very often you'll hear in the news, oh, Spider-Man did $863 million this thing.
Like coming from your data.
Every theater is submitting that data every night. So that's how it gets compiled, that gross figure of what the ticket price is. But the tickets, a percentage of that goes to the studio. They determine what that is. We agree to that, and then you'll pay that percentage to them. And that percentage ranges from 30% up to about 65% on the very high end. So the newer film will be definitely up in that 60. So we've got Indiana Jones opening tonight, and it's up in that range.
So you sell a ticket for $10 for simple math. They're taking $650,
and we're that. So I always try to encourage our patrons, buy popcorn. And I'm like, when everybody is handing over the $60 for that's not going to me at all. And then if you get older films, which is called second run, and I'm not sure if I even have all this right, but second run in general is that once a movie kind of reaches the 4, 5, 6 week mark, when we all grew up or have been to these like $2 theaters, like the Toonie Theater, that would be a second run theater. And so once it's kind of reached its kind of useful period in theaters, then it goes to there, and that's when the percentage drops.
Mhm.
But the bigger the movie, the longer that term is. Like Avatar, I don't think went to second run, the one that came out in December, till like February or March. It would have been much longer. So yeah, that's the kind of basics of it. And so I have a booking agent that helps me navigate that, and he's out of Toronto, and he does a great job, particularly at this time of year, because many of the movies will be required to be carried for, if you open them, 3 or 4 weeks. So if you want to open it on opening, like Indiana Jones opens today, June 30th, and I'll only have it for 2 weeks. But what a booking agent can do is help kind of share the load with other theaters in your area. So it's all about the distribution. The studios want to be released on so many screens. The bigger the film, the more screens. And these are all things that I'm just surmising about. I don't really know. I just have a vague idea from what I learned from my agent, but that's his job to manage these things.
Yeah.
And so
would he keep track then of what's coming out? And then you'd probably at some point you'd have to juggle, okay, maybe you have Indiana Jones coming out, and then you also have like Batman coming out, and then so you have to juggle.
He's doing all that about when, and so like I know what my schedule is, 1 or 2 weeks out with certainty. And right now I know what my schedule is, in like not confirmed, but what is tentatively thought will happen. I have all of that information right now, but those are moving parts. If a movie does really well, maybe we would hold it, or hold it means like if you get it for a week, but it just is bonkers, you would hold it for another week. And sometimes the studios will tell you that you have to do that. So there's all of these things moving around, and it's just a movie, but there's quite a bit going on. I really feel like it's the duck in the water. You're trying to just gracefully swim around, but underneath the feet are moving and dealing with all of these little, getting the movie in, and the payments and all that other stuff that come along with it.
Yeah, because then you would have to, then do you pay them monthly? Like you'd pay Paramount,
you pay them at
something like that.
Yeah, you pay them pretty much at the end of so the movie finishes on Thursday. I'll usually draft the check up for them on Friday or Monday. It's in your best interest to stay as ahead of that as possible, especially living in a small town. It takes a little longer for checks to move around. And most of these guys, that's still how they deal with it, just paying like that. Just
send them a check. Like, are you sending a check to like Hollywood?
Yeah, I send a check to Warner Brothers Studio or Buena Vista, which is Disney, and all these studios have a Canadian office, so all these things go out to their offices in Toronto. Most of the studios operate out of Toronto in Canada.
Oh my gosh, I'm just imagining like Disney. It's like Scrooge McDuck is like diving into like all these checks coming in from like North America or globally,
the world,
checks coming in from hundreds of thousands of small theaters. They're like, okay, thanks, thanks for Avatar, thanks for Indiana Jones.
But they also like, these movies are so expensive to make, and like Avatar and some of these films, for the ones that make good money, there's all sorts that don't. So, there's got to, even I understand that how it is for them, and it's really no different for us as theaters too. You have some movies that, everybody thinks you're just rolling in dough, but then you'll have 2 weeks of not so much, and your payroll still goes on. And so you're always navigating this kind of peaks and valleys of things. And right now we're coming into our very busiest time of the year, and we also sell ice cream out front with the live music in the square. And so we're coming up here on our busiest, 6 or 8 weeks of the year on average. But when Mario was here, it was great. But the book club too didn't do particularly well, and and so it's that's the game.
Do they require then? Do the studios require you to play kind of a variety? Are they like, or can you say, I just want Indiana Jones, I don't want book club 2? They're like, no.
You can say no
book club 2 with Indiana Jones.
Yeah, you can definitely say no to some things. I haven't the biggest thing that's starting to change now is finally the quantity of films is going up. So there's congestion. The first year and a bit I was open, I had so many movies I was forced to carry for a bunch of time. And it's really because the studios understood that there weren't a lot of films to be had. So it's like, well, if you want it, you got to play it for 3 weeks. So now we're kind of in this opposite thing. I'll just tell you what the loose schedule, or maybe I have already, but we got Indiana Jones for 2 weeks, then Transformers, Mission Impossible, Barbie and Oppenheimer and Teenage Mutant, all for 1 week, which is not
all bangers too.
All big films. But last year, I'll play twice as many films. I'll have to look it up, but I think it's close to twice as many films we'll play at the theater this summer versus last. And that's a product of the fact that it gets kind of congested. The studios kind of have to take what they can get, and at least that's how I see it. And so I think there's just more negotiating power on the end of my booking agent and that. But it's great for theater goers, in Revelstoke. In these summer months, the locals will get to enjoy those 7 or 8 films, and hopefully a bit of something for everyone. A heavy drama and Oppenheimer, Barbie's likely going to appeal to more of the female audience, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is great for the kids. So it's wonderful to have this mix, and because as a theater, your demographic is quite unique. You're from about 5 and sometimes 3 years old, but about 5 when it seems to be normal, up to 95. We get people coming in wheelchairs and walkers and babies. And so it really is, and with one screen, we only have one screen. So it's, I do my best to play a little something for everyone, even if it means a loss for a week or a not profit week. It's important to me that I, keep everyone engaged here.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask next, is what's your strategy for managing your audiences? And I think that's smart too, because especially you have one screen and you have, we're one town. So you're not really getting you're not having anybody come from another town. So you really do need to continually engage our town, Revelstoke.
We do attract quite a bit from around the surrounding area.
Like if you're Malacor.
And Burton and South. And some people even came out here from Salmon Arm, believe it or not, for Avatar, because they don't have a 3D theater and we do. So it does happen from time to time, but you're right, most of it is drawn from the local, just Revelstoke population. Okay. And then so you just mentioned 3D theater, which is triggering me to ask you about, if I were to run a movie theater, what is the kind of required equipment and almost like capital, if super ballpark? Super ballpark. How intensive is it on if you're to start up a movie theater? I guess a lot of that's going to be your purchase price, but to upgrade all your equipment. If we were to do like a full retrofit, this is me just throwing out a number from what I know, but it would probably be about $200,000. Okay. Or north of that.
Audio, all your audio, video.
A screen, drapes. The screen that is up there is super expensive. That's going to be like 20 grand just for the screen, because it's a special material with perforated holes. And you've heard of the silver screen. Well, there's actually like some of that's, and if you have a 3D equipment, you need a specific screen for that. Then all the chairs, the sound system is quite expensive, all the amps to run that. And then I just replaced one of the more expensive pieces of equipment that we have as a theater, and that's the IMS. It's the server, the computer that actually plays the movies. It's not anything that a normal person would buy at a store. It's from Dolby. And they make that, and that was I don't know if I like saying these, it was expensive, but it's the computer that was running it before was its predecessor a few generations back, and it had faithfully served here for something like 12 or 13 years. And when the there's a company called Cinematronics out of Vancouver, and they kind of provide service to most of the theaters in Western Canada. But they'd notified me that the computer that I had was 12 years old and that a number of them were failing in the province, because many people got this equipment at a time just when everything was changing. And when these things break, they just stop working and they're past repair, warranty, past it all. They're at the end of their useful life. And I thought to myself, and the new equipment doesn't just sit on a shelf with all the kind of processor shortages. There's definitely some lead times in getting these things. So I put the order in. It took a few months, but I kept thinking to myself, if the worst possible scenario happens and this fails, we're doomed, because, you know, it could be 2 months of waiting for something to come, and maybe they'd get you like some sort of patch. But anyway, I hope that I've taken care of most of the kind of major issues to keep us humming along. It's important to me that we're open 7 days a week. Like that's the way I look at it. I was closed a day a week at one point, but I think that you have to serve your community, and that's how you'll have success. And you just want to be, I want to be known that, yeah, you know, are they open? Yeah, they're open every night, you know, like, so we're closed Christmas, but even if I could have staff, you know, there's people that need a place to go, and I've seen it all, you know, people come to endure a breakup in the seats, or celebrate a birthday, or bring their grandma, or, you know, you just see it all, and for all the reasons. And kids going on first dates, and you know, couples going on 45th anniversaries because they came there. And it's there's a charm to this business that's unique and unmistakable. It really is. It's a unique business.
Yeah, there's so much nostalgia.
Oh, for sure.
Movie theaters, and it really is. Yeah, like I remember going to the movies. It's an interesting thing, because I remember the first movie that I recall, and I'm pretty sure it was the first movie I would have ever seen in a theater. My dad took me to see Jurassic Park, and I was terrified.
Yeah.
And like, so I would have been, I don't know how old, like under 10 at the time. But I remember that. And that's so cool. And what a cool experience. I think I can't wait to take my kids to like their first movie. I'm like, when is like, my daughter going to be ready to go to the movies? And probably she's just she's pretty much 3 now. But I'm like, okay, is it like that 3?
Yeah, I would say 5. Know, but 5. Like it depends on the kid, but pretty much the first movie experience, I try to tell parents to just, you're buying the ticket, but you may be leaving 20 minutes later. You know, totally. we don't refund it if you watch a minute. But it's that. But yeah, it's something for everyone. And here in this town, it's crazy the number of people that come in and you hear, this is my first job. This was my first job. I hear it every day. There's some story, and some people share things with you. Other times you just overhear them. But it's trained generations of kids in their first job.
Yeah. And it's such a big thing, like high school, going on dates. Like that's one of the few things you can do. Like in high school, you're not really like, maybe you are, but like you're not going out to dinner. You're not doing, you know, you're going to the movie.
You go to the shows.
Boyfriend, you hold hands in the dark, and like it's so cool. And then all the way up through dating, and exactly like you said, like into you have 95-year-olds who are coming to the movies, who might have been going to the movies for like 60 years. Like that's my goal, my wish, my hope is that one day some old person walks in here and knows, because the theater started in 1938 or 39, and it operated under the Avolie name for 20 years. So it turned into the Roxy in 59. So when I did the rebranding, I did like new logos and everything when I took over, and I wanted to really kind of push it from 59, because I like the idea of just the art deco kind of outside of it. It all lends itself to it. But even then, you know, 1959, like that's a long time ago. And so we're coming up. Town who would have gone to the Avolie when it was.
There must be, like, if somebody, anyway, they'd be old, but I know a few guys that are like, they remember the name, like, you know, it was like they were young kids. But yeah, it's amazing to think that this place is coming up on 100 years of being a theater. But in 1938, I mean, whatever, 15 years. But it's yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah, that is so incredible. And that is the power, I think, also of these movie theaters is they're, yeah, like when they're shut down, like even when you guys were shut down during COVID, like it's sad because it's the lights and everything. It's like,
Yeah.
it just really feels like there's lifeblood.
Yeah, it's
Now,
the
when
place to
there's no
gather.
movie theaters running in your town, it's, yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, and many theaters, a lot of theaters struggled and didn't make it. And
Yeah.
we got some government grants. All theaters that applied got some cash, and that that scratched the itch. It didn't do everything, but it helped. And there was a few years of grants to help us through, and I
Mhm.
used some of that equipment to pay me for some of the work. I think
Totally.
I probably worked for about $2 an hour.
You break it down.
All of it, but
And all the
also
popcorn you
use
can
it.
eat. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't eat that much popcorn anymore. You work around it long enough, and you just don't even know it's there. But
Yeah. Well, you'd see me coming down. I was at like
yeah,
a frequent person with the new baby, and I'd come
yeah,
down like
yeah.
say every week and get popcorn.
They get
But
popcorn. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. It's funny. I hadn't thought about that, but that flashback, that was, yeah. I clearly remember. And man, some people just love their popcorn. It's like
love the taste of your like. It's just
we've all got our poisons. I'm more of a chips guy, but
yeah.
maybe we'll edit that out later. I don't want to kill my brand, but yeah, I'm not the biggest popcorn eater.
So let's talk about popcorn for a second. Is it just me, or does movie theater popcorn taste the same, and movie theater butter taste the same at like all the movie theaters you go to?
I would
Or is that
disagree.
just my brain?
Yeah, I would disagree. We, some of the bigger chains, those that shall not be named,
Yeah.
they're a lot more concerned with margin. So many of them don't have real butter; they'll have butter topping and some of that. So actually, a lot of the big chains,
Yeah.
butter is difficult. It's very expensive,
It's so
and
expensive.
it's like I buy the box, and I had to put the butter price up twice. Not something that I did other than to like capture costs, because it's and everybody wants more butter. It's it's expensive.
I can
But
tell you as a consumer, you can continually put the butter price up. It's okay.
yeah,
I'll
and
still
most
take it
people,
and I won't be upset. Like,
yeah,
yeah.
most people get it. And I've always tried to be fair about it too. Like, the theater has to make money to sustain itself and to look forward, and upgrade and that. And it's also that a weird business, in that really it's only open for it's open for 3 or 4 hours, but it's really generating revenue for like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's some other things. We sell ice cream and sell popcorn a bit later in that, but it's a unique business in that sense too. And so I try to run as many shows as we can, but matinees aren't going to work in the week in this town. There's just not enough people. And so we have to eke our living out of these small little pockets of time dotted through the week.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. 20 minutes, like 20 minutes a day, or like, oh man, that's so crazy.
can I tell you the one thing that I think is just fascinating about the movie business? Nothing's changed in it. Nothing. Like,
In
it's
my head,
still a
100 years.
dark room with pictures up on the screen, popcorn, candy.
Yeah.
And people have tried nachos and this and that, but how many businesses or industries are unchanged in 100 and some years in most ways? It's
Yeah.
I mean, sure, there's digital movies and that, but the basics of it's yeah. And so if you've got an idea,
Very solid formula. Yeah.
it is, and it works, and people just they like it. And if you were to remove popcorn, the business probably wouldn't last very long, and people would revolt. So
It's like I would have a hard time going to the movies. Like, I'd probably admittedly sneak my own popcorn in if there were no popcorn. I'd be like, what? How? Like,
yeah, you just need
you just gotta.
yeah. Well, I always think that's interesting. I think back to the people that have been, the caretakers before I was here, and it's the same thing. Same thing.
Yeah, it is so cool. So then, okay, so you got popcorn, soda, candy. Which one has the best margins?
Well, pop and popcorn for sure. You make good margins on that. Candy, you don't really make it, and then it's the one that I'm sure people would get upset that's a bit expensive, but it's just candy's gotten expensive. Everything's gotten expensive. We've been under considerable strain from inflation in this business. The price of popcorn doubled from when I took over. Now it's not, it was fairly cheap before, and you're getting in the big bag and that, but still it's going up considerably. And so
that's pretty big when that's like your biggest money maker and it's doubled in 3 years. Like that's not a long time. Yeah.
And it's a crop, I'm guessing, like popcorn, so maybe it'll come back down and there's these pressures, but it doesn't feel like they will.
Yeah.
So it's that. But we've had to adjust prices, and now we're just, and as all businesses we have to pass it on, sadly. But it's just the way the cookie crumbles.
Yeah. And that's got to be a balance too, because there's only so much, I would imagine, you can charge really for popcorn before people get angry.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I don't think anybody is, can't speak to everybody, but I haven't had much feedback that people are upset about it. And I also think all of the, changes and upgrades, and, there's a new website and a new this throughout the business. I think people can see that the money is being used to, update the business and help drive it forward. And so it can continue to serve the community. And I think most people on light inspection would understand that. Oh
yeah. Yeah. You pretty much have to think about it for 10 minutes.
Or
listen to this podcast. I'm like, I get it now. Yeah.
And I'm not driving a Ferrari. I don't have a giant house on the hill. It's getting
rich playing Indiana Jones. All that Indiana Jones.
It's not that crazy. Yeah.
So working with on that, let's talk about a little bit, if you can, without breaching any of your contract confidentialities, but working with studios. So you said Disney is shortest contract, but also kind of one of the more difficult ones.
Well, they're the big guys, right?
Yeah.
So they're just, they're the strictest. They have usually the longest terms on movie and that, but their Little Mermaid just played here for a week. It opened a while ago, so I just got it for a week, but it's one of the busiest weeks we had, so part of me is like, maybe I should have brought it in for that. So, you get what you pay for too. And so they're a little stricter and enforce some rules and enforce their will, perhaps. But if I look at what the biggest movies that have been here in the last, I've got something here in my office that showed the last 500 films kind of ranked, and Disney's usually well entrenched in the top of those films. So but I don't know what other specific question you have about that.
Well, especially when they hold so much power. For some of these, going back to the nostalgia piece. Is Disney Indiana Jones? Maybe they're not.
Disney is. Well,
Indiana Jones.
It is. It's Disney.
They have Marvel.
Yeah, Disney's like a lot of those films, but because I think Indiana Jones was originally Paramount, but a lot of the times these studios will, be producing so there's like Disney and Paramount. Like when you see the opening of Indiana Jones, it'll say made by this and this and presented by, so they're, they'll come together and, for financing reasons, they split the risk.
Yeah. Oh man, they just they would hold so much power. And kind of across, I guess one of the biggest pieces why they would be so big too is that they have movies that span generations. So so say The Little Mermaid that's nostalgic for me. And then if I had a child in between the ages of probably 4 to 16,
they're going to that movie.
They're going to that movie too. So it's kind of like a double whammy, that okay, you have the parents on board, you have the kids on board, you have the teenagers on board.
Those are always the busiest movies. When you capture all of that. Yeah. Like Mario was that. And Mario is interesting. I had a hunch it was
multi-generation.
But I'm 45 and I grew up on Mario. And there's people that were older, so you really had that, the young kids really wanted to go, the middle-aged kids wanted to go, the like 20s, 30s. It was just, yeah, and it was something else to see, just being sustained busy for 3 weeks. It was incredible to see, people have talked about that a bit, to me, over like when Avatar came, or when Lord of the Rings came here, it was lined up down the block, and it was fun to finally have that experience and see what this building feels like when it's just packed all the time. It was special, and we had to work very hard to keep up. And I put a new point of sale system in, so it's a bit faster, and so I think that helps get people in. But there's only so much you can do with 2 lines at the concession, So try to encourage people, threaten them, let them know if they don't come early, they don't get in, and try to create some sort of sense of urgency, because most people show up within 5 minutes of opening, and that. But the busier the show, the more trailers will load on it, so that when people get there, if they're a bit late, we still get them in for the start of the movie.
Yeah, especially those big ones. Like, I just remember, like, Star Wars is always so big for us. That's like they're in the must-sees. There's some that you just have to see.
Everybody goes, right?
Theater. Yeah.
Star Wars, when it usually comes, they'll demand 5 weeks.
5 weeks.
So usually they come out around Christmas, and so I don't know if there's one. I don't think there's one planned for that, but usually too, it's like you'll have an amazing first week, a very good second week, an incredible third week, fourth will be okay, fifth will be meh, but overall. And then the kind of nice thing about getting a movie for a long time, for me, that's easy. That's no poster change, no website change, nothing substantial. You're just, and then you're not building and testing 5 different movies. You just set it and forget it, and it just plays,
Yeah, so, you can almost like go on holidays during those mega runs.
Yeah.
It's like that's when you take a break. Yeah.
I probably wouldn't with Star Wars, because it'd be a little crazy, but it's almost a nice break. But I'd rather just have a new movie every week. That's the preference, but it doesn't always work that way.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about, I'm going to change gears to kind of more of the leadership aspect of running a business as a business leader. Is what skills do you think it takes to be in this business?
It's an interesting question.
Maybe to think about it, like if you were to hire for your role, what would you look for?
Well, you got to be able to wear a bunch of hats, in a business. We have one screen. If we had like 8, maybe you could have some sort of layers, but I'm an owner operator for the most part. And some of the back end stuff is a bit technical to, anybody could be trained on anything, but most of the employees here are teenagers. I can only hire somebody starting at 14 and older, because we work around the hot popcorn machine. So that's the legislation doesn't allow that. And so we have a few, but I've even learned with that 14's maybe a touch young. So kind of 15, 16, and then they work up here till they go to school. So you have to be able to work with kids. And that has a lot of challenges and a lot of wonderful stuff too, but it's a lot of training. It's their first job. And we all remember that. Your first job, you don't know anything about anything. Yeah. And so you have to teach all of it. And so I take that all quite seriously. I do all the training myself, just because then I know that, well, for safety reasons, a lot of it too, they're working with a popcorn machine. You just want to make sure that they're operating safely. I don't want them getting burned, not that they'd be maimed or anything, but there's just that. So, working with kids is that. And to be in this business, you have to understand that you'll be working 7 days a week, maybe not full days, 7 days a week, but you're open 7 days a week, and calls come in and things come up. And it's, for this first couple of years has been crazy, just as anything. When you take it on, it's way busier in the beginning, but you get better at it and you learn. And I also had zero experience. So, and I had to kind of teach myself all of it. There wasn't, because we took over and got closed down so quickly, it wasn't like the owners were sticking around to help me do any, the old owners, right? So yeah, you just have, you wear a bunch of hats, you have to be able to do a bunch of different things, and keeping up on the paperwork is really important, just for, the studio stuff, because if you don't pay them, they won't give you the keys to the movies. So it's important. There's those stresses of the kind of all the things that are changing all the time, the website, and you're just kind of keeping on top of things all the time. So you have to be organized and have to be able to do those tasks, working with kids and training kids, and what else would be really important. And I think that you've got to have a bit of a personality for it. You are going to be the face of the business, whether you want to or not. And I've made a choice. I'm not terribly public about things, and so the previous owners and many businesses like to kind of run it like a family business. I like to run it more like a business, and if my face pops in here and there, that's fine. But I also think, just for continuity of the theater, I don't want this to be Greg Rose's Roxy Theatre. It's the Roxy Theatre, and I'm the current caretaker of this, the owner of the business. But people have done it before, and somebody I hope will do it after.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, maybe your child.
So she'll
be scooping popcorn at 14.
She does is eat off the
that.
floor.
Yeah.
I don't know if we should be hiring her yet. She's not ready.
Her hand-eye coordination is terrible.
Yeah, and she's terrible around hot things. She just wants to touch them.
Oh, that's so exciting. It's such a cool business. And then how many staff does it take just on that staff piece?
Well, right now I think I've got, let's check, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I have 12, 13, including me. Yeah. And that's a little heavy, but I'm going through some big changes in the business. I'll get emotional thinking about it. My first crop of kids is all kind of aging out. So 2 or 3 are moving on to universities and on to the next chapter. And so I make sure I remind these kids all the time, it's your first job, but it won't be your last, so learn what you can here. I know you're not going to be here forever. I hope you're not here forever, because it's really only the forever for the one guy, that's kind of running it. But yeah, they come. And so 2 of the girls are heading off, and so they're kind of winding down, taking on some other jobs and winding down, and they've kind of notified me they're done in August, September. And so they've been great with my little one to kind of stick around and help me, because they've just seen a few years of it. So a different level of trust, certainly, with them. Mm-hmm. But then there's a new crop of kids coming in, and it's going to be like that the turnover is always going to be a part of the business, and as it is in any business, but it's just a little different here.
Yeah. And kind of cool too, to think that, like, it's a pretty cool job. It's a pretty fun job. It's like evening, so it works for those high school kids. Is that you probably on a turnover, I would guess then your turnover is like 2 to 3 years. It's like the high school term versus yearly. Not all the time in everyone, but that's kind of the goal, hopefully, because it really takes depends on the kid, but it takes them a couple of months to get comfortable here, and really a year till they're really comfortable. Like, I just can hear the sound of when the popcorn machine needs to be dumped, and so I can do it in the office, and I'll be like, dump the machine, but with them it takes a while to get all that muscle memory. But I like to think we're nice and patient here, and I remember what it was like to be a young kid. I used to marvel at like how this, I worked in kitchens a bit when I was younger, how these guys knew these things, and it's just practice and time and exposure, and you get it. But so right now I've got a pretty full roster, but I'm losing a few, and so week by, and then of course they take holidays and I take holidays, and all of a sudden you go from 14 people to 2, and then you figure it out anyway. I'm a true believer in the show must go on, so sometimes you just figure it out. It's such a big commitment business, like thinking about it being open 7 nights a week, like you being at the dinner table for family dinner every night at 6 o'clock or at 7 o'clock is like probably doesn't happen.
I'm almost always a bundle of nerves right around. So I'm getting better at it because the staff is at a better level, and the equipment and all that stuff been able to just get everything automated and kind of like the lighting system needed. Anyway, I feel just better about the business. So I'm starting to be less, but opening night, like, so Friday night, this is, Thursday, Friday is always my busiest period of the week. And it's a bit, it's stressful on these days, just waiting on because once the movie starts that first day and everything goes well, then it's good. But it's making sure, and so you test it, but there's just always some nerves and anticipation about, did I do that right? Is this right? What if something goes wrong? And yeah, so you're tied to your phone a bit, but it's not all bad. It's wonderful too. And there's some times of the year that are quite quiet and I don't think too much about it. And then at times like this, I think about it often. And so that's the trade-off.
Yeah, heading into your busy season. And that plaza where the theater is always bumping too.
Yeah, it's about to go from
increased
0
sales.
to hero. Like, it just is nuts. I've seen it a few years now, and so I've got a better idea. But it's wonderful when it arrives, because the theater when it's that busy in and around the theater, there's just an unmistakable charm to that whole space. People dancing and singing outside and grabbing some of our ice cream, and our neighbors sell ice cream, and the whole block just gets really vibrant. So if anybody's watching this, make sure you come check out the square in the summer. It's good fun.
Yeah, I can't wait. It's some of our favorite times of year. Okay, so to wrap us up, is your favorite movie still, is it The Big Lebowski? Is that what I read?
Well, that was my first film that I played, and it is a favorite of mine. I'm sad to report, I think I like movies less now, because it feels like work. But I do get in. Well, the veil has been pulled back on everything, so the mystery of it isn't there for me anymore, sadly. But I still love films, and the one I'm looking for, I can't wait till Dune comes out. That's the one, the Dune 2, and I'm really excited for Oppenheimer. The equipment that we updated upstairs allows me to play high frame rate movies now. We didn't have that capability before. And so Oppenheimer will likely be the first high frame rate movie we play. Normal frame rate, if memory serves, is 24 frames per second. Okay. High frame rate is stuff above that. So we'll be able to play 40 and 60 frame per second movie, which
is that just sharper or
sharper, I don't even know. It's cooler, it's awesome.
Better.
But it's better, but I'll have a better idea when it actually plays. But you should just have, because really what a movie is just a bunch of pictures played in sequence. It's not like a movie, it's just pictures being played, which I guess we all understood in one level. But now that I kind of really understand the back end, it literally is just a bunch of picture files getting thrown up on the screen and projected. And so
it makes more, you can visualize it more when you think about the original movie film.
Yeah, you would just have it moving like faster, right, or something like that. So, and because Oppenheimer and those films that are coming out, when they do IMAX films, IMAX is still the reels, but it's huge reels. Like, I mean, anybody can go on YouTube and kind of get a look at what the projection are like. They're massive. Like, the old ones used to be like a few that were this big, sort of thing. These ones are like table sized, massive rolls. So it's, but anyway, I'm very excited for that, to have this new ability to play that, and hopefully it's something to market, to share with people, to hopefully entice them to come and enjoy their local theater.
Yeah, that's so awesome. And do you do any like family, just like you and your wife watch a movie?
Like
just by yourself, have the theater yourself, have a private
I do it here and there. I as most people would know, when you finish your week at work, you don't want to go back to work. So but every once in a while, I put together a movie collection upstairs that I just use for private events if people want to watch something. But I've got my favorite films up there too, and so every once in a while I'll put on, I watched The Odd Couple, Grumpy Old Men is one of my favorite old films. And so I watched that. And so, there's there's nothing better than watching your favorite movie in a dark, dark room.
Yeah.
It's different than watching it on your phones, and that's where I think theaters are going to be just fine. We've all had a rough ride for all these reasons with content and closures and that, but I think most people would agree that they're happy to have theaters kind of back and vibrant, and
Oh my
it's a
God.
great it's a great way to see a film. It's a very different experience than your computer and phone and these things. So I think we're in good hope we're in good hands moving forward, and we can have lots of success to keep her running.
I think so. Awesome. Okay. Well, on that note, we'll shut her down. Is there anything, why don't you give us all the info to learn about the Roxy Theatre, to check
Sure.
showtimes, your social media, all of the need to know, find your theater and showtime.
Yeah. Well,
Not like
we're
I always think of
located.
Movie Zone from Seinfeld.
Yeah, well, we're located at 115 Mackenzie Ave here in Revelstoke. We're available at roxytheatre.info, info, and it's at Roxy Theatre or the Roxy Theatre. I should know that. But a little side note, I get people tagging this Roxy Theatre all the time. I've got the account off the old owners,
Yeah.
and I think it's just is it the Roxy Theatre or Roxy Theatre? But anyway, I get all these bands like, we're at the Roxy Theatre. I'm like, no, you're not. You're at some other one. But so I think we have a pretty good handle. It gets us confused with the many other Roxys. I'm not upset about.
Yeah.
But
No.
and so roxytheatre.info, and then we're available on Facebook and Instagram, and try to keep up with posting and keep that all relevant. It's a way that many people access the business now. So
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Greg. Thank you for setting aside the time. I know
Thanks for having me.
this is Friday and it's a couple hours before showtime. So yeah,
we'll get to it.
but you
Yeah.
get to it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, thanks
so
for
much.
having me.